Looking for a guaranteed way to create content that resonates with your audience? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients and let them choose the topic of the interview. Because if your ideal clients care about the topic, there's a good chance the rest of your audience will care about it too. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. Today, I'm joined by Reggie Yativ. He is the CRO and COO over at Agora.io. Reggie, how's it going today, sir?
Good. How are you?
I am excited to chat with you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We're going to be talking about 3 things that CMOs need to consider when they are implementing a new marketing strategy. You guys are obviously going to have some context on that from the streaming perspective. For a little bit of context to our conversation today, Reggie, can you give us a little bit of background on yourself and what you and the team at Agora are up to these days?
Yeah, so Agora is a company that specializes in building simple solutions. I'll frame it as SDKs. For developers, it means a lot that a lot of the building blocks they would need in an app would be prepackaged and pre-organized in a very, simple to integrate SDKs and APIs. So we provide those SDKs and APIs for audio, video, and live interactive streaming. And once you as a developer decided to take on live interactive streaming, for example, you would use one of Agora's free SDKs. You just go online, download them, and embed them into your app. And once you're ready to go live, then Agora provides coverage globally. So we have a network of 200 data centers globally that will actually stream your video, manage any potential problem in the video stream, because as you know, nothing's worse than you're sitting on a stream and everything starts to choke and there's problems and jitters and we actually manage all that complexity in the back end using that software-defined, we call it software-defined real-time network that actually streams your video. So cut a long story short, we give you the package, the software package as you need, and then we'll also give you the network to deploy it.
There is a lot of tech that we just take for granted that goes on behind the scenes, but just thinking about the impact of that, I can't remember, it was maybe a national championship game a year or 2 ago that everyone was up in arms because it stopped streaming on ESPN's app or one or the other. I'm going to say I don't remember the details, but some sort of memory of streaming going wrong is in my mind in some form or fashion, and just taking a second to appreciate what it takes to actually execute streaming and reaching your audience consistently, not just getting it there, but with good quality and good consistency. There's a lot of things that happen in the background. You guys are doing great work to enable that for brands. So let's transition, Reggie, into the conversation today about developing a new marketing strategy, especially if you are coming to the table as a CMO in a new position or an up and coming brand. You guys talk about 3 things that CMOs need to keep in mind: the customer, the audience that you're trying to reach, what communication platforms are you going to use to engage them, and then what are the desired outcomes that you're trying to drive, and then working backwards from there. So in that first step of determining the customers and audience that you are trying to reach, what are some of the things that you see best-in-class marketers doing in this first step here?
Yeah, so thank you. First of all, appreciating your previous comment, there's a lot of complexity in streaming and live streaming. We have 170 engineers that dream about that all day, all night to make that work. To your question, let's say I'm starting over as a CMO and I need to start profiling my targets. The first thing I would think about is, where can I find them? Where do they live? Quote unquote. What do they spend the most time on? And I think everyone, the listeners, would agree that the quite simple answer to that would be over video. And more than that, most of the time, your customers would be on their mobile phone. So, whether it's an app or whether it's on websites or whether it's something else, they will spend a lot of time on their mobile phones. That's one. Second, they'll browse and look for things. Unlike the previous generations where people were waiting for you to submit them with solutions, or we're waiting for your advertisement to hit them to hear about product. This generation and the next one will be even more so. There are researchers that would research, look online. They will join forums, conversations, streaming programs. They would really be inquiring for what they need. So as marketeers, we have to realize that we have to approach our audience in the way they understand. And also, I would add another point, in the way that entices them, the way that makes them excited. I think part of the bigger challenge now of traditional mediums or media is to keep the audience excited. The current generation and the next one is the patience span is very short. They expect you to cover a lot of grounds in 30 seconds. So there's nothing like video or streaming that actually delivers that experience. So if I was a marketeer, I would look at what brings me better return on investment? Where's my ROI going to be? And, there's much research on that, but you would see that traditional media, billboards, and stuff like that, including, by the way, Google Ads. If you look at Google revenue reports, they seem to be tracking down for 18 months now, or more than that. And the reason for it is that the pickup for those things is getting weaker and weaker. So as a CMO, I would, normally CMOs will have limited budgets, right? So they'll have to direct the dollars to where the ROI is going to be the highest. And so that's going to be the first point. The second point is, fine, so now that I identify my audience and where they live, how do I get to them in the maximum speed, the biggest way possible, and maybe spending as less as possible trying to get there, right? So where can I get, I would ask myself, how can I get 500,000 people in the same time listening and hearing me speaking about a specific product or service? How can I get that done? So most people will tell you, yeah, or online, sure. But online, again, this generation is not really interested in canned video or video that was pre-recorded. They want to be there as it happens. They want it #live. They want it happening now, right? So the other option for me as a CMO would be to look at live streaming, and that's the number two. And maybe point number three is, while I'm kind of considering my ROI and what is going to be the best way of getting to as many people as possible, I also want to make sure that the experience that they had with my brand would be the most favorable, that they feel safe, that they feel comfortable sharing their feedbacks. I also want to give them the tools to share their feedbacks. So, for example, if I'm just looking at a pre-canned video, I can maybe do a thumbs up, or I can do a thumbs down, or I can leave a comment that, quite frankly, a lot of people would not care because that's already in the past, right? But if live streaming is happening right now and I want to interact with the host and tell them, wow, that was really exciting, or wow, that's kind of boring, or have a question, right? This interaction is what makes people buy, or what makes your brand more interesting for them than other brands. I hope I made sense. Kind of a long answer, but hope it makes sense.
Hey everybody, we had to take just a minute today to tell you about our good friend Donald Kelly.
If you're not aware, he's the host of the Sales Evangelist podcast. And for over 1,200 episodes, he's been interviewing the world's best sales experts, sellers, sales leaders, and entrepreneurs who share their strategies to succeed in sales. One of my favorite episodes on his podcast is episode 1204. Look for Impossible to Inevitable in the headline. If you're not yet subscribed, just search Sales Evangelist wherever you do your listening. All right, let's get back to the show. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you kind of lead into the second thing that marketing leaders need to think about, and that is the communication platforms. Obviously your expertise is in live streaming, and you made some good points there about leveraging that sort of channel, Reggie. Can you give us some examples of where B2B brands have maybe started to experiment with live streaming, or they've seen some good results, and maybe that's around a specific use case of driving engagement to get those sorts of hand raiser questions where they might not have got that feedback from their audience via a different platform, those sorts of things?
Yeah, well, it's. I'll try to give you a couple of examples from relevant products and services. But first, going back to your first point, I think, yes, we shouldn't underestimate the importance of selecting the right platform. And for me, as, let's say, putting myself in a marketeer place, for me, what's important is that my experience will be high quality, which means quality of service will be maintained. Second, it means that I won't have interruptions and my streaming will be smooth. And third, that I'll have global reach, because what if I'm a local here entrepreneur, here in Silicon Valley, but my audience may be in Bangalore or in Shanghai or in Europe or anywhere else on the globe. I want to make sure everyone has the same quality of experience, right? Or quality of service. So I think that's, in Agora, when we wake up in the morning and work with customers, that's what drives us, is make sure the network is stable. The latency, if I can get a little technical here, latency is low, so streaming will be succinct and clear. The quality of voice is good. The quality of the video itself is good, even when it's HD, and the quality is still good all over the world. So there's a lot of little parts, little pieces that, basically creates a nice live interactive streaming experience. Now, going back to your question, I think one of the first segments in the market that recognize the power of marketing their brand through a live interactive streaming is social services. So whether you're looking at dating websites, like, for example, Meet Me, that basically started from advertising their service using live streaming, but then they ended up with basically making quite a lot of income from the actual streaming activity itself. It became an activity equally interesting to their customers than the actual dating services, right? Became an exciting activity by itself. A lot of social forums, meeting points for people, I would say social websites that offer all kinds of services for like-minded people, gaming companies. A lot of those social interactions are now at the heart of whether that product is going to be a success or not so much. So if you're launching a new game and you want to get to a lot of people really fast, what you need to do is bring a celebrity gamer and put that celebrity gamer in front of thousands of millions of people and let them play the game and let people ask them questions and strategize. And right after the session like this, thousands of people will download that game and start playing. So whether you're selling actual goods, and this is like e-commerce, for example, a lot of e-commerce businesses like Gravy Live and Shops and other websites that are doing e-commerce shows. That, I don't know if you remember this traditional TV, stuff that we normally buy when we're sick at home and have nothing to do. We buy all kind of stuff we don't need. So that old school was one directional communication. Now, the new type of e-commerce websites will offer a full interactive live streamed host that will talk to their potential buyers. And they will ask questions about the product and buy right away, like on the spot, online, as it happens. I can give you many examples, but recently I've been on a channel where basically someone was selling something as simple as a lipstick online, a new lipstick she discovered somewhere, and there were 12,000 people on that, ladies, I would say, on the channel, and a lot of them bought this right there. So think about how much time you save by reaching with this new product to directly to those people that would buy it, right? And maybe the last example, I think it's super relevant considering what's going on right now in the world, where it's getting harder for people to go about their normal business. You know, education, for example, has been really impacted in some areas of the world. So people will revert to live streaming education, live streaming based education. And we've seen a lot of uptake in that space. I can mention New Oriental, which is a very, it's a global player that is actually doing that. And Agora helped them just recently migrate millions of users onto an online education platform, simply because those people have no alternative at this point in time. But what I'm trying to give you is a sense of how diverse this thing is. I mean, it's touching everything we do every day. Those are just a few simple examples.
Yeah, those are great examples across very different industries and very different applications for sure, Reggie. So the third thing that we talked about earlier for developing your marketing strategy after identifying the customers, realizing the platforms that they're on, and then the communication platforms that you want to go all in on to hopefully see the largest ROI as quickly as possible in your efforts there across those channels, is looking at, okay, mapping out what are the desired outcomes, and then, kind of benchmarking or reverse engineering your next steps based on the spots that you want to go, whether it relates to streaming or other channels. What are some of your advice in this process for CMOs and other marketing leaders, Reggie, as they start to set out those long-term outcomes and then start to work backwards maybe into shorter-term goals, whether that's engagement, actual pipeline driven for their sales counterparts, whatever the case might be? What are some of the best practices that you're seeing marketing teams do in this third step?
So first of all, a lot of the marketing teams we talk to, they are asking a lot of good questions about, for example, scale. When you decide to undertake a project and expose your brand in a certain way, you want to make sure that the network you're choosing can actually scale. And we've seen already use cases where we had and our network can support that 1 million concurrent users in a single live streaming event. You can imagine what does that do to your ROI from this event, right? The second thing we're working on with them is how do you measure ROI? So, for example, taking it one step forward, maybe each use case will have different sets of metrics that they need to look at in terms of what is a successful marketing campaign. For example, gamers would look at session duration. So if the marketing campaign was good for this game and the live interactive streaming or just voice collaboration between the gamers have been successful, then the length of the session will get extended. People will stay more. And let's say instead of 5 minutes, they will now stay 20 minutes, which translates immediately into monetization for those businesses, right? Gamers would look at repetitiveness. So if Reggie played that game today, will Reggie come back tomorrow? So all of those metrics are helping sales and sales organizations to basically move forward, grow more in the specific use case. In terms of picking up on user behaviors and feedback, so those live streaming events include a lot of feedback from the audience. So collecting those feedbacks and keep changing your live streaming experience based on the feedback of your own customers will definitely improve your return on investment, because you're now serving them with what they want to hear, and you're discontinuing stuff that is, less interesting for them, right? So if you're marketing, you need to look at the network and the technology that enables you to be quick, agile, implement changes all the time, iterate, deploy your app in a certain way, and then tomorrow make changes. And this needs to happen really quickly. So iteration is really important. And the third one is maybe choosing wisely in terms of who you partner with in terms of expertise. Those people need to know exactly what they're doing. And sure, I'll mention Agora. We are streaming 25 billion minutes a month right now, which is a lot of live streaming. And that, of course, gives us, the benefit of experience, being able to help our customers to optimize their marketing ROI.
That is a lot of streaming. That is definitely a lot of streaming. Well, Reggie, this has been a great conversation. Anything, if listeners to this episode take one thing away, is there anything that you want to call out, that you want to make sure that they walk away with, or any parting thoughts you want to leave listeners with today as we wrap?
Yeah, well, I think selecting a partner for your next marketing campaign is probably looks complex, but I think if you find the right partners, you will know it right away. Of course, there's other aspects we didn't spend so much time on, like, for example, if you're serving a European audience, you need to be GDPR compliant. And so I mentioned briefly safety and the content needs to be also safe. So I think before we go, I want to say that if people think about the next launch or the next brand, I think the way to go will be to put the money where they can actually get the highest ROI. And if they have questions or they need more information, they can just email me directly at reggie@agora.io or go to agora.io, and we'll be happy to talk to them.
I love it. Reggie, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. This has been a great conversation, sir.
Yeah, thank you for hosting me.
I hate it when podcasts incessantly ask their listeners for reviews, but I get why they do it, because reviews are enormously helpful when you're trying to grow a podcast audience. So here's what we decided to do. If you leave a review for B2B Growth in Apple Podcasts and email me a screenshot of the review to james@sweetfishmedia.com, I'll send you a signed copy of my new book, Content-Based Networking, How to Instantly Connect with Anyone You Want to Know. We get a review, you get a free book. We both win.